"Hunt, I know how to save your son," said the poor boy to the millionaire. Desperation was etched across Helen Vanderbilt's face. The woman, known for her fashion industry fortune and her impeccable appearance on magazine covers, now collapsed. In tears as doctors rushed in all directions, her only son, Luke, just 10 years old, had been admitted with mysterious symptoms that left the best specialists in the country without answers. That's when she felt a light touch on her arm. Turning around, she saw a boy who couldn't have been more than 12 years old. He wore a faded Yankees t-shirt, worn-out jean shorts and rubber flip-flops. His eyes, however, shone with a surprising intensity. "You're the mum of the boy in room 305, right?" asked the kid, with a distinct accent from the poorer side of town. Helen wiped away her tears, instinctively fixing her perfectly dyed brown hair. Her designer heels echoed on the gleaming floor of the most exclusive private hospital in New York City. "Who are you? How do you know where my son is?" she responded, trying to maintain her composure. "Aunt, I know how to save your son," said the boy before Helen could continue. Helen looked around, searching for security. How had this child gotten past reception? St. Vincent's Hospital had a strict visitor identification system. "My name is Gabriel. My mom cleans the rooms here. I mean, she used to. I come with her sometimes. But I hear things, see things, and I know what your son has. Your son started getting sick after taking a new medicine, didn't he? One that came in a blue box with silver letters," Gabriel continued. The businesswoman froze. That detail hadn't been disclosed. Only she, the nanny, and the doctors knew about the new asthma medication Luke had started taking 3 days earlier. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice failing. Gabriel looked around nervously. "Mom, I shouldn't be here. If they catch me, they'll throw me out. But I saw your son arriving and recognized the symptoms. My friend Paul had the same thing. The doctors won't figure it out. They don't want to figure it out. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now continuing. Helen felt a shiver. Something in the boy's urgent tone made her momentarily forget she was talking to a child from the projects who probably shouldn't be there. "Let's go somewhere more private," she said, guiding him to a small, empty waiting room at the end of the hallway. The luxury of St. Vincent's Hospital contrasted with Gabriel's simple appearance. Leather seats, walls with paintings by renowned artists, imported coffee machines, a completely different world from his. "Tell me everything," Helen asked, sitting across from the boy. "The new medicine your son is taking is called Respiran. It's manufactured by Vital Pharma. That medicine is causing problems in children in my neighborhood too." Helen frowned. Vital Pharma was one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country, and Respiran had been prescribed by Dr. Richard Miller, New York's most renowned pulmonologist. "How do you know so much about this?" she asked, still suspicious. Gabriel lowered his eyes. "Because I take medicine too. I've had asthma since I was little. One day at the health clinic, they gave me some samples of Respiran. I started feeling the same things your son is feeling. Then I found out more kids were getting sick. A nurse at the clinic, Miss Judith, started investigating and—" Gabriel stopped talking when the door opened. A doctor in an impeccable white coat entered, looking surprised at the scene. "Mrs. Vanderbilt, I was looking for you. We need to talk about new tests for Luke," said Dr. Miller, giving Gabriel a stern look. "Is this boy bothering you?" Helen noticed the fear in Gabriel's eyes. "No, doctor. This is my housekeeper's nephew. He came to bring something I asked for," Helen improvised, surprising herself by protecting a stranger. Dr. Miller didn't seem convinced, but nodded. "Well, when you're done, meet me in room 214. We have important decisions to make." When the doctor left, Gabriel whispered, "Don't trust him, ma'am. He knows about the problem with the medicine." "That's a very serious accusation," Helen replied, but something inside her stirred. As a trained doctor before abandoning her career to take over the family business after her father's death, she herself had noticed inconsistencies in Luke's symptoms. "I know it is, but if you want to save your son, you need to talk to Miss Judith. She was fired from the clinic after she started asking questions, but she has proof. She lives in Sky Heights." Helen felt a chill in her stomach. Sky Heights was one of the most dangerous housing projects in the Bronx. A place someone like her would never visit. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care? Gabriel's eyes filled with tears. Because Paul wasn't so lucky. And because you're a doctor, right? My mom told me, said you quit medicine when your husband... Enough, Helen interrupted. It had been 5 years since she had practiced medicine since her traumatic divorce from Maurice, which had left her emotionally destroyed. How can I be sure you're not making this up? Vital Pharma belongs to your ex-husband, doesn't it? Gabriel asked directly. Helen felt as if she'd been slapped. Maurice Vanderbilt was in fact one of the main shareholders of Vital Pharma, something that wasn't widely known. How did this boy know that? And your son's medicine causes small purple spots on the neck and behind the ears, which doctors say is an allergy, but it's not, it's the first sign. Helen stood up, stunned. Luke had exactly those spots, and the doctors had dismissed them as a mild allergic reaction. I'm going to get my phone, said Gabriel, pulling an old broken device from his pocket. I have photos that Miss Judith took of the medical records before she was fired. The images were blurry, but sufficient to show Helen a disturbing pattern. Children with symptoms identical to Luke's all taking Respirin. Your son will start feeling numbness in his feet soon. Then he'll have trouble swallowing. The doctors will say it's a complication of the original disease, but it's the medicine that's causing it. Helen looked at the boy, a mixture of fear and gratitude taking over her. How can I find this Miss Judith? I can take you to her, but it has to be today. Your son doesn't have much. Don't say that, Helen interrupted, frightened by the possibility. I need to get back to Luke now. Can you meet me at the parking lot exit in an hour? Gabriel hesitated. Okay, but come alone, ma'am. Don't tell anyone at the hospital. They're getting money from Vital Pharma to test the medicine. It's like a hidden study. When Helen returned to Luke's room, she observed her sleeping son, connected to various monitors. The new medication in an IV bag connected to his arm. Carefully, she examined his neck, and as Gabriel had said, found small purple spots that she had previously ignored, trusting the doctor's diagnosis. Gently, she temporarily disconnected the IV, telling the nurse she needed to hug her son without the tubes in the way. After removing the medicine, she kissed Luke's forehead and whispered that she would be back soon. The decision she was about to make could put everything at risk. Her carefully constructed life, her reputation, perhaps even custody of her son, since Maurice constantly accused her of emotional instability in their legal battles. But her maternal instinct and the medical knowledge she had suppressed for years screamed louder. An hour later, wearing dark sunglasses and a scarf covering her hair, Helen drove her own car, dismissing her driver, toward the parking lot exit. Her heart almost stopped when she saw Gabriel being approached by 2 hospital security guards. Without thinking twice, she accelerated and stopped beside them. "He's with me," she said with authority. "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" The men, immediately recognizing her, backed off. "Sorry, Mrs. Vanderbilt. This boy was hanging around the parking lot and, as I said, he's with me. Thank you for your vigilance." Gabriel got into the car, trembling slightly. The smell of imported perfume and new leather was a shocking contrast to his reality. Helen had never given a ride to someone like him in her Mercedes. "Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. I still don't know if you're telling the truth, but I'm willing to investigate. Now tell me, how do we get to this Sky Heights?" The journey from the Upper East Side to the Bronx was like traveling between worlds. The postcard New York was left behind, giving way to a much harsher reality. Helen, who managed a fortune of over $500 million, was entering a universe where people struggled for pennies. "Better park down here," suggested Gabriel when they reached the base of the housing project. "A car like yours attracts attention up there." Helen nodded, feeling completely out of her comfort zone. She swapped her heels for flats she kept in the car for emergencies and followed Gabriel through narrow alleys. Sky Heights was a labyrinth of simple apartments, many still under construction, with tangled wires cutting across the sky and loud music coming from various corners. Children ran freely, while adults looked at her with suspicion. It was evident that she didn't belong there. "Almost there," said Gabriel, guiding her through a narrow passageway. They stopped in front of a small apartment, but visibly well kept. Flowers in cans decorated the entrance, and the cement floor was clean and swept. "Miss Judith," called Gabriel, knocking on the door. "I brought the doctor I told you about." The door opened, revealing a middle-aged black woman with grey hair tied in a bun. Her eyes, shrewd and lively, examined Helen from head to toe. "So you're the ex-wife of the man who had me fired," said Judith without beating around the bush. "I didn't know Maurice had anything to do with your dismissal," Helen replied, surprised. "Come in, it's not safe to talk about these things in the street." The interior of the apartment was simple, but impeccably clean and organized. Modestly, framed diplomas on the wall showed that Judith wasn't a simple nurse. She was a professional with specialization and more than 25 years of experience. "Gabriel told me about your son, I'm sorry," said Judith, indicating a chair for Helen. "He's going to be fine," Helen replied automatically, fear showing in her voice. "I need to know what's happening. Is my son really in danger?" Judith exchanged a look with Gabriel. "Go get some water for our visitor, boy." When Gabriel left, Judith lowered her voice. "That boy has a huge heart. Since he started coming to the clinic with his mother for asthma treatments, he's always been observant. He was the first to notice the pattern." "What pattern?" "Children with mild asthma taking Respiran and developing serious complications. I started documenting the cases, thinking it was just an unlisted adverse reaction, but the more I investigated, the stranger it got." Judith went to a cabinet and took out a folder carefully hidden behind some books. "Here are copies of the medical records. I made them before I was fired. Respiran didn't go through all the necessary tests. It was approved on an emergency basis with incomplete studies. And guess who has connections in the ministry that expedited the approval? Maurice," concluded Helen, feeling her stomach sink. "Exactly. Vital Pharma is using communities like ours as human laboratories. The medication is in a post-launch observation phase. That's what they say officially. But in reality, they're documenting side effects in real time using people who can't sue or make noise." Gabriel returned with the water, handing Helen a clean but slightly cracked glass. "Thank you," she said, taking a sip to be polite, but her mind was racing. "Are you sure about all this? These are very serious accusations." "I have this," said Judith, pulling a flash drive from her pocket. "Internal emails leaked by a lab employee. I was preparing a dossier to deliver to the district attorney when I was fired. Coincidence, isn't it?" Helen examined the printed documents. The patterns were too clear to be ignored. Her medical knowledge, dormant for years, awakened with full force. It was as if all those years practicing medicine returned at once. "Luke has shown all these initial symptoms," she said, pointing to a list. "What happens next?" Judith hesitated. "If the medication isn't stopped immediately, the neurological damage can become permanent. We need a specific antidote that counterbalances the toxic component." "What antidote?" asked Helen, desperate. "It's a simple compound, actually, but not readily available. Vital Pharma itself developed it as a precaution, but doesn't distribute it with the medication. It's in the files I got." Helen felt anger growing inside her. While examining the documents, a photo among the papers caught her attention. It was her ex-husband Morris in a meeting with Dr. Richard Miller, the doctor treating Luke. "They know each other," she murmured, stunned. "They're partners," Gabriel replied. "Dr. Miller is the one who selects the patients for the new medicine. My mum was cleaning his office and overheard a conversation." Helen felt her phone vibrate. It was a message from the nanny. "Dr. Miller wants to transfer Luke to the ICU. Says he's gotten worse. Where are you?" Panic took over her. "I need to get back to the hospital now. They want to take my son to the ICU." "That's how they isolate patients who show the most severe symptoms," explained Judith. "To control who has access, to manipulate. The treatment without external interference." Helen stood up, determined. "I'm going to stop this. Judith, I need that antidote. I can prepare it. I have the knowledge. But it will take a few hours, and we need specific ingredients." "Money isn't a problem. Tell me what you need." "It's not a question of money, but of access. Some components are only available in advanced laboratories." Helen thought quickly. "I know someone who can help, an old college friend, Dr. Camilla Porter. She runs the research department at the State University. I'll call her now." While dialing, Helen observed Gabriel talking quietly with Judith. There was something special about that boy, a mixture of intelligence and compassion that touched her deeply. Camilla answered on the third ring. "Helen, it's been so long. What's happened?" "Camilla, I need your help. It's a medical emergency involving my son," said Helen, quickly explaining the situation without going into too many details over the phone. "My God, that's terrible. Come to my lab immediately. I'll provide access for you." Helen hung up, feeling slightly relieved to have taken a concrete first step. "Let's go, we don't have time to waste. Judith, Gabriel, I need you to come with me. Judith to prepare the antidote, and Gabriel because—" Helen paused, realizing she had created an inexplicable bond with that boy. "Because you know this story better than I do." On the way to the car, Helen questioned, "Gabriel, where is your mother? Does she know you're involved in all this?" The boy lowered his eyes. "My mom is so tired, ma'am. She cleans the hospital during the day and does house cleaning at night. She barely has time to see me. And my little brother, Pete, stays with the neighbor." Helen nodded, understanding the harsh reality of so many American mothers. "And your father? He left when Pete was born, said he hadn't asked for another kid." The simplicity with which Gabriel related his story broke Helen's heart. As she drove back to Manhattan, now with two unlikely passengers, she thought about how her life had completely changed in just a few hours. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The State University was almost empty at that time of tonight. Camilla was waiting for them at the entrance to the biochemistry building, visibly surprised to see Helen accompanied by a middle-aged black woman and a boy from the projects. "Helen, so good to see you," said Camilla, hugging her old friend. "Let's go in. I explained to security that we're conducting an emergency experiment." In the laboratory, modern and well-equipped, Judith impressed everyone with her technical knowledge. While preparing the antidote following the formula she had memorized, she explained each step with scientific precision. "Do you have training in pharmacy?" asked Camilla admiringly. "I have a nursing degree and specialization in clinical pharmacology, but public hospitals don't value that. They kept me giving injections and changing bandages," replied Judith, while carefully measuring a component. Helen was receiving constant messages from the nanny. Dr. Miller was insisting on transferring Luke to the ICU, claiming that his condition had suddenly worsened. She replied that she was on her way and that nothing should be done until her arrival. "How much longer will it take?" asked Helen anxiously. "We're in the final phase. About 20 minutes for the compound to stabilize," replied Judith. Gabriel, who was observing everything with fascination, asked, "Did you like being a doctor, Mum? Why did you stop?" The question caught Helen by surprise. "I loved it, Gabriel. It was the most fulfilling thing in my life." "Then why did you—" "Stop," Helen sighed, realizing she had never explained this to anyone so directly. "When I married Maurice, he was just starting to expand his businesses. I supported him, believed in his dream. My father passed away, and I inherited the family, companies. Maurice convinced me that we needed to join forces. Gradually, I put medicine aside. Before I realized it, I was just managing fortunes and attending social events." "And do you like that?" "No, Gabriel, I don't. But life sometimes takes us down, paths we didn't plan. You could go back to being a doctor," suggested the boy with the simplicity of a child who still believes that anything is possible. Helen smiled sadly. "Maybe, but now I need to focus on saving my son." Helen's phone rang. It was Dr. Miller. "Helen, where are you? We're concerned. Luke had mild seizures. We need to start a special protocol immediately." "Do nothing until I get there," Helen replied firmly. "I'm on my way. And Dr. Miller, I know about Respiron. I know everything." A heavy silence settled on the line. "I don't know what you're talking about, Helen. Your son needs urgent care. If something happens because you're delaying treatment, the responsibility will be yours. The responsibility will be with those testing experimental drugs on children." "Without parental consent," Helen shot back, hanging up. "Ready," announced Judith, showing a vial with a clear liquid. "The antidote is ready." How do we administer it? Asked Helen. Intravenously, slowly. It will neutralize the toxic component of Respiran without affecting other medications your son might be taking. Helen carefully stored the vial in her purse, while Camilla provided a small refrigerated box for transport. Helen, this is very serious. If what you're saying is true, we need to report it, said Camilla. First, I need to ensure Luke is okay. Then I'll take care of that, I promise. In the car on the way to the hospital, the mood was tense. Helen drove with concentration, trying to organize her thoughts. How would she confront Dr. Miller? How would she explain the presence of Judith and Gabriel? And most importantly, how would she ensure her son's safety? Ma'am, someone's following. Us? Gabriel suddenly said, looking through the rear window. Helen checked the rearview mirror and saw a black car close behind. Her heart raced. Are you sure? Yes, I saw the same car when we left the university. Helen accelerated, but the car also increased its speed, maintaining the distance. Damn! She swore, momentarily forgetting Gabriel's presence. Sorry. It's okay, ma'am, I've heard worse. Despite the tension, Helen couldn't avoid a smile. There was something in Gabriel's sincerity that captivated her. Let's change the plan, decided Helen, making an unexpected turn. We can't go straight to the hospital with that car following us. Where are we going? Asked Judith, holding on as Helen made quick maneuvers in the New York traffic. To my house. I have a second car there, and I need some things. Helen's mansion in the Hamptons impressed Gabriel and Judith. Built in the 1940s by a Wall Street baron and renovated with refinement by international decorators, the property was an oasis of luxury and security. My God, Mom, your house is bigger than our entire school in the projects, commented Gabriel, mouth agape. Helen parked in the underground garage and took them through a side entrance, avoiding the staff. The last thing she needed was to explain the presence of these unusual visitors. Wait here, she asked, leading them to a small sitting room adjacent to the kitchen. I'll get some things and change clothes. In her room, Helen changed her elegant clothes for something more practical. Jeans, a simple t-shirt and a dark jacket. She took out her personal medical equipment from a locked drawer, stethoscope, blood pressure monitor, some basic medications. She hadn't used these for years, but always kept everything in order, as if deep down she knew she would need them again one day. Next, she went to the safe behind a painting and took out important documents. Luke's medical records, her own medical board identification, she had never cancelled it for some sentimental reason, and a considerable amount of cash. When she returned to the room where she had left her guests, she found Gabriel asleep on the sofa. The boy looked exhausted, the dark circles under his eyes more pronounced in his sleep-relaxed face. He had an asthma attack last night, explained Judith in a low voice. Barely slept, and today he spent the whole day on this quest to help your son. Helen felt a wave of emotion. This boy who barely had enough to eat was risking his own health to save a stranger. Why does he care so much? She asked, genuinely curious. Judith smiled sadly. His friend Paul, who he mentioned before, he's not doing well. The effects of Respiran left him with severe neurological sequelae. Gabriel blames himself for not noticing in time, and when he saw your son arrive at the hospital with the same initial symptoms, he decided to act, completed Helen, moved. Gabriel is special. He has an incredible capacity for observation and a photographic memory. If he had been born in different circumstances, he could have been a brilliant doctor. Helen looked at the sleeping boy, feeling an inexplicable connection. Perhaps because she saw in him the same passion for medicine that she herself had nurtured in her youth, before getting lost in social commitments and the demands of being a Vanderbilt. Let's wake him up. We need to go to the hospital. We'll use my spare car and enter through a secondary entrance that I know. At the hospital, the tension was palpable. Helen instructed Judith and Gabriel to be discreet, as if they were just ordinary visitors. She had provided fake badges, using her influence as one of the hospital's largest donors. Remember, if anyone asks, your distant relatives. Judith is my cousin from Pennsylvania, and Gabriel is her son, Helen directed as they went up in the service elevator. The plan was simple. Enter Luke's room, administer the antidote, and then confront Dr. Miller with the evidence they had. Helen knew it was risky, but she saw no other alternative. Every minute that passed was another minute her son was in danger. When they reached the pediatric floor, Helen felt a tightness in her heart. The ICU area had reinforced security, something unusual for a hospital, even one as exclusive as St. Vincent's. "This isn't normal," she murmured to Judith. "They're protecting the special cases," replied the nurse. "I saw the same pattern at the clinic." Helen approached the reception desk, where a nurse was typing intently. "Good evening, I'm Helen. Vanderbilt, I've come to see my son, Luke." The nurse looked at her, surprised. "Mrs. Vanderbilt, Dr. Miller was looking for you. Your son was transferred to the ICU an hour ago." "What?" exclaimed Helen, feeling her blood run cold. "But I left explicit instructions that nothing was to be done until I arrived." "I'm sorry, but Dr. Miller determined it was an emergency. Your son's condition suddenly worsened and—" "Where is Dr. Miller now?" interrupted Helen, her voice trembling with anger. "In the conference room on the 3rd floor. He's in a meeting with some representatives from Vital Pharma." Helen exchanged a significant look with Judith. The connection was there, wide open. "I'll see my son first," decided Helen. "I'm sorry, but only the attending physician can authorize visits to the ICU at this time. Dr. Miller's orders." Helen felt her anger growing. "Listen carefully," she said, leaning over the counter. "I am a mother and a doctor. No one is going to prevent me from seeing my son. If necessary, I'll call the hospital director right now, who happens to be my cousin." The lie came out with surprising conviction. The nurse hesitated, clearly intimidated. I can try to speak with the ICU head nurse." "Do that immediately." While the nurse made the call, Helen whispered to Gabriel, "Do you know the layout of this floor? Do you know how to get to the ICU another way?" "Yes, ma'am. There's a service door next to the equipment room. The staff use it when they need to move large things." Helen nodded, again impressed with the boy's knowledge. "The ICU head nurse is coming to speak with you," informed the receptionist, hanging up the phone. Minutes later, a middle-aged woman with a severe expression approached. "Mrs. Vanderbilt, I'm Irene, ICU head nurse. I understand your concern, but your son is in a special protocol that requires isolation." Helen studied the woman's face. There was something in her eyes. Fear, guilt. "I want to see my son. It's my right as a mother." Unfortunately, Dr. Miller was very specific. No visits until tomorrow morning, when the results of the new tests are ready. Helen was about to explode when she felt Judith lightly touch her arm. "Helen, perhaps we should respect the medical protocols," said Judith aloud, before adding in a whisper, "Let's try the other entrance." Helen took a deep breath, understanding the strategy. "All right, I understand the need for protocols. I'll return tomorrow. However, I would like to speak with Dr. Miller before I go. Of course, I'll inform him that you're looking for him as soon as the meeting ends." When the head nurse walked away, Helen, Judith, and Gabriel casually headed for the side corridor. "It's this way," indicated Gabriel, guiding them to a discreet door with the sign "Authorized Personnel Only." Helen tried to open it, but it was locked. "Damn!" "Let me," said Gabriel, taking a small metal object from his pocket. With surprising skill, he manipulated the lock until he heard a click. "There." "Where did you learn that?" asked Helen, between admiration and concern. "On the streets you learn a little bit of everything, ma'am. Not always for good reasons, but sometimes it's useful for good things." The service corridor was empty at that hour. They quickly made their way to a second door that, according to Gabriel, gave direct access to the ICU area. "Wait," said Judith, grabbing a lab coat hanging on a hook. "Put this on, Helen. You look like a doctor. You'll blend in." Helen put on the lab coat, feeling a strange comfort in that familiar gesture. How many times had she done exactly that, years ago? "And you two?" "I have experience in going unnoticed in hospitals," assured Judith, "and Gabriel is an expert at hiding. We'll find your son and then meet you at the emergency exit." Helen hesitated, reluctant to separate from them. "The antidote?" she asked, concerned. Judith carefully handed her the vial. "Remember, intravenous slowly, about 10 ml would be ideal for Luke's weight. It will neutralize the toxic component without interfering with other medications." Helen put the vial in the lab coat pocket and took a deep breath. Thank you for everything. Go on, Mum, save your son, said Gabriel with an encouraging smile. With her heart racing, Helen pushed the door and entered the ICU area. The aseptic environment and the constant beeping of machines brought back memories of her time as a doctor. She moved with confidence, as if she belonged there. The pediatric ICU had 6 beds, but only 2 were occupied, one of them by Luke. The sight of her son connected to so many devices made her heart ache. The purple spots now spread across his neck and arms, exactly as Judith had predicted. An on-duty doctor Helen didn't know was making notes in the chart. "Good evening, doctor," she said naturally. "I've come to check on patient Luke Vanderbilt. Dr. Miller requested an additional evaluation." The doctor looked at her with a neutral expression. "Dr. Helen Porter," she replied using her maiden name. "Neurologist. I wasn't informed about an additional consultation. It's a recent request. Dr. Miller is concerned about possible neurological complications related to Respiran." The mention of the medication made the doctor slightly pale. "I see. Well, the patient is stable at the moment, but had mild seizures about 2 hours ago. We're following the special protocol for these cases." Helen approached Luke, examining the monitors and the chart with clinical eyes. What she saw alarmed her. The vital signs were controlled but artificially. Heavy sedation, medications to control symptoms, not to treat the cause. "I'll need a few moments alone with the patient to perform specific neurological tests," she said with authority. The doctor hesitated. Dr. Miller was quite specific about, "Doctor, we're talking about a potentially serious case of medication-induced neurotoxicity. Every minute counts. If you prefer, you can call Dr. Miller directly and explain why you're delaying an evaluation that could be crucial." The firmness in Helen's tone had its effect. The doctor, who probably wasn't privy to all the details of the special case, nodded. "All right, I'll be at the next bed if you need anything." As soon as the doctor walked away, Helen kissed Luke's forehead. "Mommy's here, sweetheart. Everything will be okay." Efficiently, she checked the intravenous line already installed. She needed to act quickly. She took out the antidote vial and a disposable syringe she had picked up from the nearby medication cart. With the skill that years of medical practice had given her, she prepared the correct dose and slowly injected it into Luke's venous access. Her heart was beating fast, a mixture of fear and hope. "Please work," she whispered, watching the clear liquid disappear into the tube. She waited a few minutes, carefully monitoring the vital signs. There were no significant changes, which was a good sign. It meant the antidote wasn't causing adverse reactions. "Dr. Porter," called the on-duty doctor, approaching again. Are you finished your evaluation?" "Almost," replied Helen, maintaining her calm. "I'm observing some specific reflexes." That's when she noticed. The small purple spots on Luke's neck seemed to be diminishing? Or was it just her desperate imagination? "Doctor, I'm sorry, but Dr. Miller just called. He's on his way and asked that no one touch the patient until his arrival." Panic threatened to take over Helen. If Dr. Miller found her there, everything would be lost. "I understand. I've finished anyway. I'll wait for Dr. Miller in the meeting room." Helen kissed Luke's forehead one last time, whispering, "I'll be back soon, my love. Stay strong." She left the ICU with firm steps, removing the lab coat as soon as she entered the service corridor. Judith and Gabriel were anxiously waiting for her. "Did you do it?" asked Judith. "Yes. I administered the antidote, but I didn't have time to see if it worked. Dr. Miller is on his way." "We need to get out of here," said Gabriel, worried. "Not without concrete evidence," replied Helen with determination. "We need to go to the conference room where Miller was meeting with the Vital Pharma people. There might be documents, information we need." "It's too risky," warned Judith. "More risky is leaving my son in the hands of those creeps. Let's go." Using Gabriel's directions, who knew the least monitored paths in the hospital, they reached the 3rd floor. The conference room was empty, but the lights were still on. "Keep watch," asked Helen, quickly entering. On the conference table, folders and documents had been left behind, probably in the rush to respond to the call about Luke. Helen quickly examined them, photographing pages that seemed important with her cell phone. "My God," she murmured. As she read an internal report, It was exactly as Judith had said. Respiran was being tested in controlled groups without formal consent. The serious side effects were being documented as field data for formulation adjustment. And worse, Morris's name was on all the documents as the project lead. Her ex-husband was deliberately putting children at risk for profit. "Helen, someone's coming," warned Judith from the door. Helen quickly put away her phone and picked up a folder to disguise. Seconds later, Dr. Miller entered, accompanied by a man she immediately recognized, Edward Santos, Scientific Director of Vital Pharma, and Maurice's right-hand man. The surprise on their faces when they saw her was evident. "Helen, what are you doing here?" asked Dr. Miller, visibly nervous. "Hello, Richard." "Edward. What a coincidence to find you. I was looking for you." How is Luke?" asked the doctor, trying to maintain his composure. "Interesting that you ask. I just saw him in the ICU. I don't know what you're giving him, but the purple spots seem to be diminishing." The two men exchanged alarmed looks. "You shouldn't have entered the ICU without authorization," said Dr. Miller, his voice trembling with contained anger. "There are specific protocols being followed." "Yes, I saw the protocols," replied Helen, showing the folder she had picked up. "Field study Respiran, observation of neurological effects in pediatric patients." Fascinating reading. Edward Santos stepped forward. "Helen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. These documents are confidential and misunderstanding. You're using my son as a guinea pig for a medication you know is dangerous. That's not a misunderstanding, it's a crime." "Calm down," asked Dr. Miller. "What's happening with Luke is just a rare adverse reaction that we're closely monitoring. He's perfectly safe. Don't lie to me, Richard. I know everything about the neurotoxic component of Respiran. I know about the children in Sky Heights who developed the same symptoms. I know that you have an antidote that you deliberately don't disclose." The shock on their faces confirmed everything. "Who told you this?" asked Edward, approaching threateningly. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I have enough evidence to destroy Vital Pharma and end your careers, unless, of course, you do exactly what I'm going to ask." At that moment, Maurice Vanderbilt entered the room, his aristocratic face showing surprise at seeing his ex-wife. "Helen, what are you doing here?" "Good that you arrived, Maurice. We were just discussing how you're poisoning our son to increase your company's profits." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. Maurice's face hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about. Luke is receiving the best possible treatment." "Treatment? Or do you mean experimentation?" retorted Helen, throwing the documents on the table. "I have everything here, Maurice. Everything. And I've already sent copies to trusted people. If anything happens to me or Luke, this will end up in every newspaper and TV channel in the country." The tension in the room was palpable. Maurice looked at his accomplices and then back at Helen. "What do you want?" "First, I want my son out of this hospital now. Second, I want the official Vital Pharma antidote for all those affected by Respiran, including the children in Sky Heights. Third, I want Respiran off the market until it's properly reformulated." "Impossible," replied Edward. "We've already invested millions." "I don't care about your millions," exploded Helen. "We're talking about lives, about children." "Let's be reasonable," intervened Maurice with his negotiator tone. "Perhaps we can reach an agreement that satisfies everyone." "The only possible agreement is the safety of the affected children," replied Helen firmly. "And one more thing. I want our custody process ended. You will drop all accusations of emotional instability against me and acknowledge that Luke is better under my care." Maurice laughed bitterly. "You really think you can blackmail me? I have more power and influence than you imagine, Helen." "This isn't blackmail, Maurice, it's justice. And if you want to know what it's really like to have influence, try seeing your name splashed across every newspaper as the businessman who used children as guinea pigs." At that moment, they heard a commotion in the corridor. Gabriel came running in. "Ma'am, there's security coming up. I think they've discovered us." Maurice looked perplexed at the boy. "Who is this kid? What's going on here?" "This is Gabriel. replied Helen, placing her hand on the boy's shoulder. "And he knows more about medical ethics than you and your bought doctors." Judith entered right after. "Helen, we need to go." A doctor recognized Gabriel from the commotion in the parking lot earlier. Maurice narrowed his eyes. "You brought strangers into the hospital. This only proves your instability. I'll get full custody of Luke after this." "These strangers saved your son's life, something you were risking for money," retorted Helen, her voice trembling with anger. The sound of approaching footsteps indicated that security was near. Helen had seconds to decide her next move. "Maurice, you have a choice now. You can help me get Luke out of here safely, or you can face the most devastating scandal that America has ever seen in the pharmaceutical industry. Choose." The businessman looked at Edward and Dr. Miller, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded slightly. "All right, let's resolve this. But one way or another, you're going to hear me out afterwards." Maurice went out to the corridor and, with his natural authority, dismissed the security guards, claiming it had been a misunderstanding. When he returned, his face was pale with contained anger. "What did you do to Luke?" he asked directly. "Miller says you were in the ICU. I saved our son from the poison you were giving him. The antidote should be working by now." "What antidote? Where did you get that?" Helen looked at Judith with respect. "From someone who really cares about patients, not profits." Maurice ran his hand through his hair, clearly tense. "You have no idea what's at stake here, Helen. On the contrary, I know exactly what's at stake. Lives, children's futures. Your greed isn't worth that." At that moment, Dr. Miller's phone rang. He answered, listened for a few seconds, and his expression changed. "It's from the ICU," he said, looking perplexed at Helen. "Luke, the purple spots are receding rapidly. Vital signs are normalizing. What exactly did you give him?" Judith stepped forward with the dignity of someone who knows their profession deeply. "A specific neutralizing compound for the neurotoxic agent present in Respiran, something you already knew was necessary but chose not to make available." Dr. Miller frowned. "How did you—" "I'm Judith Johnson, former head nurse at the Sky Heights Health Clinic. I was fired for questioning the increase in neurological cases after the introduction of Respiran. And yes, I have documented every case, every piece of evidence." Edward Santos visibly paled. "Maurice, this is getting out of control. We need to—" "Shut up," ordered Maurice before turning to Helen. "What do you want exactly?" "I already told you. Luke leaves here now, under my custody. Respiran is immediately withdrawn from the market, and you provide complete treatment for all affected children. That will cost millions." "And how many lives will it save?" interrupted Gabriel, surprising everyone with his courage. "My friend Paul can't walk properly anymore because of this medicine. There are 15 more kids just in my projects with problems, and I bet there are many more out there that nobody's counting." Helen felt immense pride in the boy. His moral clarity, his courage to face powerful adults, was admirable. Maurice studied Gabriel for a moment, then looked at Helen. "All right, I'll order Luke's transfer to another hospital under your supervision. As for Respiran, it will be removed from the market," insisted Helen. "Today. I can't just—" "You can and you will, unless you prefer that I call a press conference tonight." The impasse lasted some 10 seconds until Maurice finally gave in. "Fine, we'll figure it out. But this doesn't end here, Helen." "I completely agree. This only begins here." In the following hours, a complex operation was set up. Luke, still unconscious but with stable vital signs, was transferred to the university hospital, where Camilla, Helen's friend, ensured he would receive genuine care without hidden interests. Maurice, under pressure and fearing the scandal, issued an internal communication at Vital Pharma, ordering the immediate suspension of Respiran distribution, citing a safety protocol review. The hardest part was convincing Edward Santos to release the antidote stock that the company secretly kept. Only when Helen threatened to directly involve the FBI and the FDA did he finally agree. 2 days later, Luke woke up completely. The purple spots had disappeared, and the neurological exams showed no signs of permanent damage. Helen didn't leave his bedside, dividing her time between caring for her son and coordinating with the help of Camilla and Judith, the treatment of other affected children. Gabriel visited daily, having developed an instant friendship with Luke. The two boys from such different worlds connected in a way that surprised everyone. "How is he?" asked Gabriel one afternoon, timidly entering the hospital room. "Better every day," replied Helen, smiling. The exhaustion was visible on her face, but there was also a renewed energy, a rediscovered purpose. "The doctors say in a week he can go home." "That's good, ma'am." "And your friend, Paul, how is he responding to the treatment?" Gabriel smiled, hopeful. "Better. He was able to stand on his own yesterday. Dr. Camilla said it will take longer for him because he went without the right medicine for too long, but that he can improve a lot." Helen nodded, satisfied. In the last 48 hours, her life had turned upside down. The scandal involving Respiran was being hushed up by Maurice's powerful interests, but she had ensured that at least the victims received proper treatment. "Gabriel, I need to thank you. If it weren't for you, Luke could have—" "No need to thank me, ma'am. I just did what was right." The simplicity of the response touched Helen deeply. "I just did what was right." How many people in the business world in which she had lost herself in recent years would say such a thing? "And your mother, did you manage to talk to her?" Gabriel's smile diminished a bit. "I did. She was worried but understood when I explained. But now she's afraid they'll cause problems for her at work because of me." Helen had already thought about this. Gabriel's mother, who worked as a cleaner at the hospital, could easily suffer retaliation from Maurice or his allies. "Don't worry about that. I have plans to help your mother." At that moment, Luke woke up, his eyes immediately searching for Gabriel. "Hi, did you bring the game?" he asked, excited. Gabriel smiled, taking an improvised chessboard from his worn backpack, made of cardboard and bottle caps. "I did. Today. I'm going to teach you the knight's move. It's the hardest." Helen observed the two boys, amazed at how easily they understood each other. Gabriel, in his simple wisdom of a child who grew up too fast, was teaching chess to Luke, while Luke shared his electronic games and books with Gabriel. Helen's phone rang. It was Maurice. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "I'm at the hospital. Now is not a good time." "This isn't a request, Helen. It's about the future of Vital Pharma, and consequently, about Luke's financial future." Helen sighed. Even after everything that had happened, Maurice still thought like a businessman. "All right. I'll meet you in the cafeteria in 15 minutes. Hanging up, Helen turned to the boys. "I need to meet someone. Will you be okay alone for a while?" "Sure, Mom," replied Luke, already focused on the improvised board. "If you need anything, the nurse is in the hallway," reminded Helen, kissing her son's forehead before leaving. In the hospital cafeteria, Maurice was waiting, impeccably dressed as always. His rigid posture and calculating look were familiar to Helen. That's how he prepared for difficult negotiations. "How is Luke?" he asked when Helen sat across from him. "Getting better. No thanks to you." Maurice ignored the provocation. "We need to resolve this situation, Helen. Vital Pharma is facing questions from the FDA. Our investors are nervous. The stock value has already dropped 15% just with the announcement of Respiran's suspension. And this should matter to me because, like it or not, part of Luke's inheritance is tied to the company's success. And because I'm still his father." Helen studied her ex-husband carefully. Despite everything, he wasn't a bad man, just obsessed with success and blinded by ambition. "What do you propose, Maurice?" "An agreement. Vital Pharma acknowledges there were flaws in the Respiran testing process. We commit to fully finance the treatment of all affected children, create a compensation fund for the families, and completely reformulate the medication before any reintroduction to the market. And in exchange? In exchange, you don't go to the press. We keep this as a voluntary recall, not as the scandal that could destroy the company." Helen considered the proposal. It was more than she expected to get. "And what about our dispute over Luke's custody?" Maurice sighed. "I'll withdraw the request for exclusive custody. You're right, Luke is better with you. He always was. I just wanted to be part of his life." The unexpected sincerity surprised Helen. You will always be part of his life, Maurice. You're his father. But you need to remember that some things are more important than business and profits. Maurice nodded slowly. I learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. I almost lost my son because of my greed. A reflective silence hung between them. Finally, Helen spoke. I accept your terms, but with additional conditions. First, I want Judith to be reinstated at the health clinic, with a promotion and an official apology. Second, I want Vital Pharma to finance an independent health surveillance program in underprivileged communities to prevent something like this from happening again. I can do that. And third, Helen hesitated, thinking about the best way to express what she wanted. I want you to support a project I'm thinking of creating. What project? An institute for talented children from underprivileged communities. Children like Gabriel who have incredible potential but no opportunities. I'll call it the Hope Institute. Maurice seemed surprised. That's unexpected. Why this sudden interest? Helen smiled, thinking about how her life had changed in just 3 days. Because I met a boy who risked everything to save a stranger. Because I rediscovered what's really important. And because maybe it's time to practice medicine again, in a different way. I see, said Maurice, studying his ex-wife with new respect. And how much do you need to start this institute? 20 million to start, and your political support to get the necessary licenses. Maurice laughed, but without sarcasm. Always straight to the point, aren't you? All right, considering that. You could be asking for billions in damages. I think it's a good deal. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that both knew would change many lives. When Helen returned to the room, she found Luke and Gabriel sleeping. Luke in the hospital bed, Gabriel in the chair beside it, the improvised board between them. There was a peace in the scene that deeply moved her. In the days that followed, as Luke recovered, Helen began to put her plans into practice. The first step was to ensure that Gabriel's mother, Simone, was protected from any retaliation at the hospital. With Helen's influence and Maurice's newly discovered remorse, not only was Simone's job guaranteed, but she received an offer to work at the future Hope Institute with a much higher salary. For Gabriel and his younger brother Pete, 6 years old, Helen offered complete scholarships at one of the best schools in New York, as well as medical treatment for Gabriel's chronic asthma. A week after the crisis, Luke was discharged. On the way home, Helen made an unexpected detour. "Where are we going, Mum?" asked Luke, confused when the car headed to the Bronx instead of the Upper East Side. "We have a stop to make first." "When?" They arrived at Sky Heights. Luke looked out the window with curiosity. It was the first time he had visited a housing project. "Is this where Gabriel lives?" "Yes, dear. We've come to pick him and his family up for a special lunch." Simone's simple apartment was in a frenzy when they arrived. Gabriel, nervous and excited, had tidied up the family's few belongings. Pete was running in circles, excited at the idea of riding in a luxury car. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Vanderbilt?" asked Simone, still unsure about the radical change in their lives. "Absolutely, Simone. The Future Hope Institute needs an administrator with your experience and dedication. And the boys deserve all the opportunities." The lunch was at Helen's mansion, something that initially intimidated Simone, Gabriel, and Pete. But Luke's joy in having new friends and Helen's genuine hospitality soon melted away any discomfort. While the children played in the pool, with Luke proudly teaching Pete to float, Helen and Simone talked on the veranda. "I can never thank you enough for what your son did for mine," said Helen, moved. "Gabriel is an extraordinary boy." Simone smiled, her eyes watery. "He always was like that. Sensitive, observant, concerned about others. His father, well, he never saw those as qualities, said the boy was weak." "He couldn't be more wrong," replied Helen firmly. "Gabriel has the kind of strength many adults will never have. He will be a great man someday." In the following weeks, everyone's lives changed drastically. Helen renewed her medical license, dedicating herself to planning the Hope Institute. Judith was fundamental in this process, bringing her experience and knowledge about the real needs of underprivileged communities. Gabriel and Pete started at the new school, with Gabriel showing exceptional talent for science. Luke, completely recovered, became inseparable from his new friends, learning from them as much as he taught. The Respiran scandal was, as agreed, kept relatively discreet. A voluntary recall was announced, and Vital Pharma publicly committed to new safety protocols. Behind the scenes, however, more than 200 families received substantial compensations, and a multi-million-dollar fund was created to finance independent research on medication safety. 3 months after the crisis, the Hope Institute was officially inaugurated. Occupying a restored historic building in downtown New York, the Institute offered educational programs, medical support, and development opportunities for children from underprivileged communities. At the inauguration ceremony, Helen invited Gabriel to cut the ribbon by her side. "This institute exists because of you," she said, moved, "because of your courage and kindness." Gabriel, a little fuller after months of proper nutrition and asthma treatment, smiled shyly. "I just wanted to help, Ma'am. Like you helped afterwards." The celebration brought together important figures from New York society, many of them surprised by the new Helen Vanderbilt, no longer just the businesswoman and socialite, but now also the doctor and philanthropist with a commitment. Even Morris showed up, keeping discreetly in the background. His relationship with Helen had transformed into something more respectful, united by their love for Luke and the shared commitment to repair the damage caused. 2 months after the Institute's inauguration, Helen received Gabriel in her office for a serious conversation. "Gabriel, you know your mother and I have been talking a lot, right?" The boy nodded, curious. "She told me she's very happy with the new job, and Pete is loving the new school too." "And you, are you happy?" Gabriel hesitated. "Very, ma'am. I never thought I'd be able to study at a school like this, have friends like Luke. But sometimes I feel like I don't deserve all this, that I'm not really special." Helen felt her heart tighten. Even with all the positive changes, Gabriel still carried the insecurities of a lifetime of difficulties. "Gabriel, look at me. You are special, not just for what you did for Luke, but for who you are. Your intelligence, your compassion, your determination. These are rare qualities, especially in someone so young." The boy lowered his eyes, moved. "Thank you, ma'am. Actually, I called you here because I have something important to propose, but I need you to understand that there's no pressure, no right or wrong answer." Gabriel straightened in his chair, suddenly alert. "What is it, ma'am?" "Your mother and I have talked about the possibility of you and Pete coming to live with us, with me and Luke, not just as visitors or friends, but as part of the family." Gabriel's eyes widened. "Like adoption?" "Yes, if you want. Your mother would still be your mother, of course. She could live with us too, or maintain her own space, as she prefers. The final decision is hers and yours." Gabriel was silent for a long moment, processing the proposal. "Why, ma'am? Why do you want this?" Helen smiled, moved by the frankness of the question. "Because you and Pete have brought a joy to our home that didn't exist before. Because Luke adores you like brothers. And because I care deeply about you, Gabriel. You taught me to be brave again, to fight for what's right. You reminded me of what really matters in life." Gabriel wiped away a furtive tear. "But what about my friend Paul and the other kids in the projects?" Helen felt a wave of pride. Even faced with a proposal that would change his life for the better, Gabriel's first concern was for others. "They will always have a place at the Institute. Paul is already receiving specialized treatment, and we're expanding the programs to include more children. Your work helping others doesn't have to stop, Gabriel. In fact, with more resources, you can do even more." The boy considered for a moment, then timidly asked, "And if I want to be a doctor someday?" "Like you?" Helen smiled, moved. "Nothing would make me happier, and I'll do everything in my power to make that dream come true." The next day, Simone, Gabriel, and Pete visited the mansion for a special dinner. Luke had decorated the house with balloons and signs that said, "Welcome to the family," in colorful letters. During dinner, between laughter and stories, Gabriel stood up shyly. He began, looking at his mother and brother, who nodded encouragingly. "We want to say that we accept the invitation. If the offer is still open." Helen and Luke exchanged emotional looks. The offer is certainly still open, replied Helen, standing up to hug all three. Does this mean you're going to be my real brothers? Asked Luke, excited. For real, confirmed Pete, jumping with joy. Simone, with tears in her eyes, squeezed Helen's hand. Thank you for giving my sons what I never could. You gave them the most important thing, Simone. Character, kindness, strength. I'm just adding resources. In the months that followed, the new family adjusted to life together. There were challenges, of course, cultural differences, distinct habits, expectations to be aligned. But there was also much love, respect, and a shared determination to make it work. The Hope Institute prospered, expanding its programs to more communities. Helen returned to practicing medicine, dedicating 2 days a week to caring for underprivileged children. The Respiron scandal, though contained, resulted in significant changes in medication regulation in the United States. 1 year after the fateful day when Gabriel approached Helen at the hospital, the family gathered for a special celebration. The adoption process had been officially finalized, and Gabriel and Pete were now also by law Helen's children. During the small party at their home, Gabriel stepped away a bit, observing the scene with wondering eyes. Luke and Pete playing animatedly, Simone talking with Judith, who had become a constant and dear presence, Helen laughing at something Camilla was telling. Helen noticed his look and approached. Everything okay, son? The term was still new, still caused a wave of emotion in both. Everything's perfect, Mom, replied Gabriel, also testing the word. I was just thinking about how things have changed. A year ago, I was so scared when I approached you at the hospital. You were the bravest person I've ever met, Gabriel, and you still are. The boy smiled, reflective. You know what makes me happiest? Seeing how Paul is improving, how the other kids in the projects now have a chance to study at the Institute, how we managed to change more things, not just our lives. Helen hugged her son with pride. At his recently completed 13 years, Gabriel already demonstrated a wisdom and compassion that many never achieve in a lifetime. That's what makes me happiest too, Gabriel. Seeing how one brave action can trigger so many positive changes. You didn't just save Luke that day. You saved many other children, and in a way you saved me too. At the party, Luke proposed a toast. To our family. That began in the strangest way possible, but is the best family in the world. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Helen looked around at that unlikely family that had formed from a crisis. Luke, her biological son, now healthier and happier than ever. Gabriel, the brave boy who had changed everything. Pete, who brought innocent joy to every corner. Simone, whose silent strength inspired respect. And even Judith and Camilla, who had become extensions of this unconventional family. Life had come full circle, from doctor to reluctant businesswoman, and now back to medicine, but with a renewed purpose. From a single mother concerned only with her only child, to the matriarch of an expanded and diverse family. From a woman who had lost her way, to the leader of an institution that changed lives, all because a poor boy had the courage to say, Aunt, I know how to save your son. The end of the story. And you? Do you believe that an act of courage can change so many lives? Share your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart and make us reflect on what really matters in life.